Got a couple of inboxes tonight, and I decided that the best way to go over this would be to take a look at the project instructions and compare it to the rubric just to get everybody on the same page. So the project instructions are found by going into the modules and going into week 1. So when it says complete parts 1 through 4, some confusion was happening there. You have to go back to week 1 where you had the overview, and that would tell you exactly what you needed to do there. So if I kind of go through the parts, and I'm skipping those overviews because this is really about week 3. The first thing is to collect your survey data, which I've seen tons of links, and thank you to everyone who's responded to the links. That's been so helpful for everyone. But the second part was you had to present your data in table form. And so if we look at the rubric that I'm working with, it was 10 points that you included your data. So there were some issues with somebody may have submitted a phenomenal report, but if you didn't have those 100 data values, I had to give you a 0 out of 10. So it's really important to just kind of use this rubric as a checklist because there were a lot of really great submissions this week, but it missed the mark with the rubric, so I couldn't really give you the grade that reflected the math because you didn't meet the criteria in the rubric that's being required. So then we're going to go on to part 2. Now, a lot of people had a great part 2 because we did the planning worksheet and we talked about a lot of things in the planning worksheet. So there were some really great responses here, and I really enjoyed reading a lot of the details that you guys gave for your sampling technique as well as the bias. There are still a few misconceptions about the sampling technique. So I just want to quickly reference one of the announcements I had made about this. Let's see. So here, the project information announcement, I posted a couple of things that I was seeing in those project planning worksheets that was incorrect. So one of them was the random sample, the simple random sample. And there's a lot of confusion because we use that word random a lot, and it has a definite connotation of like, oh, I had people randomly walk in Starbucks, and so I chose them at random. That's not what a simple random sample is. So a simple random sample would be I had a list of every person in the sample or the potential sample, and I then used a random number generator, and it selected people for me to survey. Now, the confusion happens because you think, well, everyone has an equal chance of being chosen if I posted my survey on Facebook. But if we kind of dig into that thought process, are you friends with everyone on Facebook? So the chances are probably not. I think Facebook limits you to a certain amount of friends. So at that point, not everyone has a fair chance of being chosen. And in a simple random sample, once you choose those people, you're chasing them down. It's a lot of work. So no one had a simple random sample in their design. So I want you to revisit that if you did, because that was the only place I really saw some confusion with the sampling method. So we're going to go back to that project direction. Okay. So this is what was new, the bias. And I think that may have just been unclear to some students. So what is bias? Bias is anytime you have done something that might make your results not quite be accurate. So in the context of the projects that I read tonight, let's think about if you only posted your survey on Facebook, are there any groups of people that might not have access to Facebook? Maybe older people who aren't as technology friendly, or younger people that don't have accounts, or people who just avoid social media. So there's a lot of bias that happens there. There was a couple of things I thought about with some of the surveys where people might not want to tell the truth. So if you're asking them, how often do you eat at a fast food restaurant, if somebody gets fast food every day for lunch, they might not want to admit that, even though it is an anonymous survey. So as a researcher, it's a good idea for you to say, people might feel uncomfortable answering this question truthfully, whether it's anonymous or not. So you're not saying they did answer it untruthfully. You're just saying there's some potential there that someone may not have been fully truthful. Most people had the population versus sample down in their project worksheets, but you had to include that in your write-up as well. Spot on with the qualitative and quantitative, but look at this. You had to take it a step further. You had to tell me, were they nominal or ordinal? And if quantitative, were they continuous or discrete? So some of that got lost in the translation of writing the paper up. Descriptive or inferential. I just want to give a little clarification here with these two. If you are doing something inferential, you are drawing a conclusion about a group of people, not about a claim. You're saying if people eat out more, they're going to be overweight. You're not going to have that data, right? Because you're just testing the claim of, well, how often are they eating out? So think about that as you do inferential statistics, because inferential statistics is I've analyzed a bunch of variables and the relationship between those variables has been proven with statistics to be related, which we haven't visited in this course. Hint, hint. So just think about that a little bit more as you write that. And let's visit the rubric here just to check the rubric out. So our sampling technique had to have a valid source. If you did not have a source, that puts you over here at 4 points. So there were a lot of really good write-ups, guys. Really, really good stuff that I read, but you didn't have a source. So that puts you over here instead of over here. So again, I don't want you guys to be discouraged. There was some great stuff, great writing that was happening, but if you didn't have a source, that was a limitation for the grading. Everyone did a phenomenal job with describing their survey and how they did it, how people were targeted. That was phenomenal. Then you had the population versus sample and study type. Again, you had to have a citation. If you did not have a citation, that set you back to a 4. If you didn't answer, if it was a data, statistic, or a parameter, that also set you back to a 4. Or it does not meet expectations, depending on how much information you gave me, regarding the other one. All right, so swapping over. I know toggling these screens is kind of challenging. Okay, so then we had to treat our data like a data set from the homework. And let me just clarify what that means. In all of the data sets from the homework, you only had one column with one variable. That should be true of all of your visuals. So if you had a survey with multiple questions, that's okay. But each question is its own file in Minitab. So you would enter the one column and you would either do a histogram, a bar chart, a pie chart, what we've learned in this class. I had some really great visuals pop up, but if you look at the rubric, you had to have your name in the export. If you didn't have your name, that puts you back at a 5 out of 20. So there were some excellent visuals in these papers that I really loved, but if you didn't include your name, I could only give you 5 points. So go back and just check that your name is in those exports, and by definition, that also means it has to be in Minitab because Excel's not going to put your name in things. So you need to be able to do that in Minitab. And then the other thing is, if we keep reading, you need a citation from a valid source explaining how the visuals are appropriate for your data. So we're thinking back to that claim. So you want visuals that are going to impact us as a class and make us realize that your claim is true or your claim is not true. So that's the lens we're looking at these visuals. We're not making visuals for the sake of visuals. We're making them to prove a point. So think about, you're trying to prove a point. I think that'll make things click better for you. And see, it even says here to give me that detailed paragraph. And there's some examples. So that's part 3. In part 4, phenomenal work in Minitab. Everyone had these excellent exports with their mean, their median, their mode, their range, their standard deviation. That was awesome. What happened is you also needed a paragraph interpreting the meaning of it, as well as the different measures of central tendency. So if we go into the rubric and we look at that, because that might be a little confusing for some people, You had to have the minimum number of statistics. That was a non-negotiable. But you had to have a citation on why the chosen statistic was appropriate. So think back to our discussion in week 3. I put a lot of comments in the discussion area about when do we use mean versus median versus mode in week 2, sorry. So in your paper, you should be able to tell me, based on your data set, which one of those 3 is the best measure of central tendency. If you ask 3 questions, you could tell me that for any one of the 3 questions. But again, you want to be specific to your claim. So at some point in that data, you had to have found the average value from your claim and decided if it supports the claim or it doesn't support the claim, and hey, here's why. So maybe there were like a ton of outliers, and so something might have come close to it, but you're concerned that, hey, it might not be true because there's so many outliers. And that's the conclusion of the points. And so again, I don't want you to feel like you're frustrated and you're lost. There were a lot of really good submissions that were just lacking these fine components that were needed in the rubric in order for me to be able to give you credit. Now, as a quick look ahead into the final project, if you notice, you're only doing 2 more things for the final project. That's it. So the goal is submit this by Sunday in APA format, which means a cover page. Your parts are your headings, and these are not numbered questions. They are answered in complete sentences in a paragraph form. I want you to do your best to put it in APA format so that it's not graded in this submission, and I can just say, hey, by the way, this is something wrong with your APA formatting. Make sure you correct it before your final submission when we are grading it for correct APA. So go ahead and make your best attempt at it. Now is the time to make a mistake and learn from it, because you're not grading the rubric on it. In your feedback, I'm going to give you some specifics about parts 1 through 4. So if something isn't accurate in parts 1 through 4, I'm going to point that out to you, and you can make that revision before you do. You can make that revision before you do anything for the final project. So as long as we're following along with that checklist, you've got all your components. If there's something missing or something's a misunderstanding, we're going to fix it now. So when you submit the final project and it's worth so many more points, then we're going to be able to go ahead and fix it so you can get those extra points. So if you have questions, make sure to watch this video, send them to me in the inbox. Make sure that you've read your paper carefully, you've measured it against the rubric, you've noticed, hey, maybe I didn't include my name in a visual, maybe I didn't include citations. Fix that, resubmit the paper into the box for week 3. Send me a message once it's resubmitted. I will probably not be getting to them until Sunday and Monday to grade them, but you don't have anything due in week 4 for the project. You're working in the mini tab assignment there. So it gives me the opportunity to grade, and you're not going to be behind on things because you're getting something regraded. I firmly believe we learn from our mistakes, so I don't want you to be discouraged and think that you're terrible at statistics. I'm telling you, I read some really wonderful submissions tonight. It's just the fine-tuning things that needed to happen, and that's why I posted the announcement, and that's why I made this video, so I can help you be the best version of yourself and earn the grade that really reflects what I think you're capable of. So I hope that this video clarifies some things. I hope that we can get these submissions done and we can finish out this course really strong, and we can make sure we have better skills moving forward.